Oh, is this thing on? All right, we have a lot to get into, folks. So sit your booty down. It's about to get real. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the BFC, where we go into the trenches of the trading world. How are we doing today? Before we go any further, all right, I got to tell you guys about a business, one of my friends' businesses. They got cooking in Buffalo. If you love chocolate, you're going to love Belly Boy Buffalo. And, I know one of the owners, they brought over some of their product and it's really, really good. So I'm just going to leave the QR code up there for the duration of this. And if you feel the urge to order some chocolate, give them a freaking shot. It's really good. And they even have those Dubai bars. That seems to be the cool new thing that all the kids are enjoying is those Dubai bars. But yeah, there's the code. Have at it. And we have a lot to talk about today. I know why you're all here. You're here for YCRM. All right. They were up 50% on Friday, and it looks like they are ready to make some noise. Very excited about this. Let's just run down a couple things. Their revenue increased 27.4% to 4.81 million, up from 3.78 million in 2023. Their net income reached 4.4 million. 2.4 million in debt was canceled. 28.4% decrease in cost of goods sold. Gross profit surged 145.7% to 2.98 million, up from 1.21 million in 2023. And guess what? They're SEC reporting too. And they're sitting at dub 1.2, if I'm correct. So this is a stock and a company that is ready to make some freaking noise. I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to bring in the CEO, Mr. Rick Jordan. Let's do it.
What happens when you get hacked? What happens when you have thousands of dollars that are just siphoned out of your bank accounts? Where do you go from there?
Cybercrime today is going to take advantage of every weakness it can find.
People are getting hacked without them knowing about it.
Ransom, bribery can be digitalized, can be systematized.
It is all over the world. It is not something that is narrow to a specific enemy.
Some guys could be sitting in a coffee shop next to you, stealing your information. You have no idea.
You will be a victim of cybercrime.
It affects every individual.
It can cripple and destroy businesses.
It is coming from everywhere.
It can happen to anybody.
And their goal is to make a functioning business out of being a cyber criminal.
Eventually, you're going to be breached. How do you minimize that?
Mr. Rick Jordan, welcome to the BFC. How you doing? Long time no see.
What's shaking, Eric? It's been I think about 15 months, 14 months, something like that. Yeah.
It has. And well, I got to say, as I was formatting the show and we're back and forth, I looked at my bank account halfway through the week and I realized that somebody's been using my card. I'm like, I just got paid and I'm like, well, there's like $500 missing out of my account. And I immediately thought of you. I'm like, well, this is fitting. We have the show coming up. So I go, I have the perfect guest for today.
Yeah.
Now, what the hell, dude, has been going on for the last year? What's been going on? And it seems like YCRM is ready to make some noise and ReachOut is ready to make some noise. So what's been going down, dude?
Yeah, we're at the point now to where it's, if you want to call it a reset, I would say it's a reset. Because we talked, I think it was in January of last year, in 2024, and we had reverse merged. ReachOut had reverse merged into YCRM. It was a great move for us. That was November of 2023, and then in January we spoke, and we had just posted. I think I don't even know if we had filed anything yet. I can't remember because everything's a blur over the last 14 months. It's been so interesting. But then it was around May or so that we filed a 10Q for the first period because it was difficult to try to get our fiscal year switched. That was one of the issues we had. And I've learned a lot about OTC over the last 14 months or so. And it's kind of like people called it the Wild West. And I saw it as much worse than that. Much worse than that. The Wild West at least had some good old boy rules. But when it came to this, you'd get different answers from different analysts over at OTC, and then it was when we filed that 10Q for the old period because they put us on a grace period the first time, even though we had already changed the fiscal year, filed with the SEC. That's what caused them to notice, is when we filed something and then we filed an amended Q and they're like, whoa, time out one sec. Then they had a human look at it. I found out because I have a podcast, right? Just like this, right? I've got a global podcast that's in over 90 countries now. And it's for those who are a little technical, it's like, this, you push it out through an RSS feed, and Apple and Spotify, they all grab the episodes when that RSS feed is updated. That's the same way OTC works with the SEC. They grab those things in. So a lot of times there's not a human that looks at them. So, and a lot of times it just doesn't pick up what it's supposed to pick up from the SEC either. So even though they say that, oh yeah, we abide by the SEC, we don't make the rules. It's like, well, then why do we need humans involved if that's really the case? So it was interesting. And this isn't to blame any specific person. I want to make a statement up front, brother. There's a lot of shit that happened last year. And, the best metaphor I've been able to use so far or come up with is that when a tornado hits your house, or really when it's coming toward your house, you really don't see it until the last minute. It's not really visible until right up until it's maybe 500 yards away, something like that. You can't move your house, dude. You get to the point to where you realize it's like, this is going to hit, period. So then what do? You hunker down. And then after that, it's like stuff happened. Do you sit in the rubble or do you rebuild? There's some people that'll sit in the rubble, right? They'll go and move over to somebody else's home, or bunk up with somebody and be like, oh, this sucks. And then they're in the same spot for 5 years. That's not what we did. So everything that I talk about, everything that took place as we talk about this tornado last year, it's not to place this YCRM or myself or anybody that works for the company in a victim-like mindset, because I fucking hate that. So it's not to be woe is me. It's to say, this is what happened. Factually, this is what happened. This is what I did about it. This is how we got to the point we are right now. It sucked that it took so long, but there was just so much cleanup that it was inevitable after that tornado hit the house.
It's remarkable. And you're still here. See, folks, he survived. He survived the first OTC tornado.
I think I put it out last year because it was a point last year where it was in consideration, right? Because ReachOut obviously producing revenues. That's clear, right? And so I see some of the comments over on. I don't engage on iHub or StockTwits. I used to engage on StockTwits a little bit. iHub at the beginning until I really. you talk about the OTC being Wild West. Good God, iHub. But I see some of this like, is this a scam? And is it I bet you they're not even a real business. I see these funny comments, and it's like, I started this thing 15 fucking years ago. I did, just me, before any ideas of going public whatsoever. The only reason I went public is because somebody approached me about it. I had no thoughts about it until it was around 2020 or so, and the first thing that I did was a Reg A. It took about a year and a half to get that up and running, and then that was kind of my first foray into the capital markets. And it was all just to raise money, man. Everything was to raise money in order to build something that actually mattered, because the industry's fragmented. I still have this, if you want to call it a noble idea, I guess you could call it that, but just to really kind of plant the flag on the map across the country, across North America at some points, because the industry's fragmented. The old MSP model's dead. And I went about things in a specific way last year, and I found out maybe that's not quite the way to do it. Yeah, and that's for many reasons, not just because of the difficulties that we had with sellers of the acquisitions. Getting into, other things that took place around that, but it's just because, that's not the right way to go if you want to scale fast. And you said something, it's like, I'm still here. It's like, dude, I can't tell you how much fucking pizza I've eaten the last year, dude. Seriously. I mean, I try to stay fit and everything, but the stress, it like starts to hit you. And then it's like, that's one of the things. I got Tony's Pizza in the town in Chicago. It's seriously the best pizza. And the dude just bought a plane, and he has like a brand new Ferrari too. And he has a Lambo and all these things. He's got a little pizza joint, you know? So it's like, I want to be like Tony. But yeah, I learned a lot more about my resilience level. I knew I could take a lot of hits, and I didn't know that I would ever face anything like I did the last 14 months. But you're right.
Wow.
Still here. There was an opportunity to spin ReachOut out, out of YCRM, around middle of last year. And I chose not to, because we still would have needed to go through the audits that we went through. It was just presented to me, and I'm like, what does it matter at this point? Because it's, at that point we were already on the expert market. There was an opportunity to go somewhere else, because dude, there's shells all over the place when it comes to OTC. I've learned that too. Get into a different vehicle and then go to town from there. That's not what I did. I do value shareholders. In order to make shareholder value even exist, the company still has to be profitable. The company still has to execute on its vision. Yeah, so it's there's hard decisions along the way, man. There always is.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad to see that you're sticking with that. And guys, keep putting as many questions as you want in the chat, because I'm going to get to all your questions. And so you survived the OTC purge. We'll call it purge now. You say it's a step above the Wild West. And so, you got through the audits, you got to where you had to go. You're at a really nice spot now. And you know what? You're not the only one where you're like, and trust me, like I plan on getting public within the next 12 months. And I'm hearing all the stories from all of you guys that come on the show and share your experience. And I'll tell you right now, like you could try to learn as much as you can from somebody else's experience, but you really never, you never learn until you do it yourself. And so, nervous,
I've got great advisors too. I mean, I've got Kevin Harrington on my board,
Oh yeah.
He's with Celsius, and he was there the whole way. He's still in it. A lot of other great advisors. I mean, my other board member is Kingsley Charles. I've known him. He was actually my personal financial advisor. However, he worked with a lot of Reg Ds and companies up to 500 million and cut his teeth in Fortune 100. So he's the financial guy. So when I take a look at those two, and then there's me, of course. We got three. We're actually we are actively looking for two more, because we need 5 for NASDAQ. So we're still planning on the uplist. That's still the goal. It has to be, because there's no way I want to fucking stay in OTC. That experience was shit, man. But we'll do with what we have right now in order to get there. And
well, I mean, clearly, the numbers don't lie. A lot of times you see companies raise a boatload of money. I've seen it a lot of times. They raise cash and they don't put up any revenue. And you wonder, like, what the hell did they put their money into? They don't even achieve gross profit. They don't achieve, it's all expenditures. It's like, and there's no progress made. And so there you're sitting there, you're looking at all the notes, you're looking at all the fundraising, all the Reg A, everything they do, and they have nothing to show for it. Your net income swung to 4.4 million this year.
Yeah.
An impressive turnaround. I mean, what specific operational or strategic decisions were most responsible for this profitability shift?
Yeah, it's a great question. At the beginning of the year, when we did our 10KT at the beginning of 2024, that's when we shifted and aligned the fiscal years. Because again, YCRM had a fiscal year end date of 10/31, probably because it was an ice cream company. That's the only thing I can think of, seasonality, right? And it's out of Philadelphia, so it makes sense. It gets cold there in the winter, just like Chicago. ReachOut's always been a calendar year. It just there was never any reason to not have that. So the 10KT aligned that transitional reports. And when we did that report, we threw in everything in the kitchen sink, man. I mean, just disclosed everything, because if you take a look, like from 2024 to 2023, you can see there was a loss of 23 million or something like that coming out of 2023, and that was because of a lot of the way that I still don't understand completely, right? I'm a CEO, but I am a numbers guy. I've always been a numbers guy. I still don't understand completely some of the derivative math. I always excelled in math. I was in the gifted program for math and way back in grade school. It just comes to me naturally. Some of that stuff is still super complex, so when I see 23 million, I saw that when we filed the 10KT, and I literally said this. So I'm like, what the fuck is that? We did not lose $23 million, that it's, and the best that they could come up with was like, oh yeah, it's a bullshit number. It's just how the derivatives happen. If all the notes convert at the price it is right now, that's what the liability would be, and that was the best explanation I got for it, so, we got some notes that were put in somewhere around $1.1 million. And if all of those converted at the fixed price, then that's how many shares, multiply that times the share price, and that's the liability that's on the books, and that's how the 23 million came into play, at least from what I understand anyways.
Yeah.
And so
this makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So then this year, I love educating too, man, because this stuff is interesting to me. But then this year, 4.4 million is because the market value of the company, a lot of that was fair market value gains. And there was a question, I'll say it, because this wonderful dude in the Telegram chat, I say this with love and with hate both at the same time. That's which means neutral, emotionless. But at the same time, they were asking, it's like, how can you have 2.8 million in gross profit, but you had an operational loss? And when you look at that, yes, we had 4.4 million for the year, but on the operational loss, if you take a look, a lot of that was in something called impairment loss. The majority of that was impairment loss that's on the balance sheet and on the P&L. And that was us writing off, like straight up writing off acquisitions that we made because they went to shit, for tons of different reasons. So it's like, well, that's gone. So that's how it looks on the books. Yeah. And still somebody asked us, like, how can you have 3.2 million in payroll? It's like, well, that's when we had almost 100 employees before we shrunk everything down, because of course, I mean, one of the big ones was the Red Gear acquisition that just went to shit. And after that was just pushed aside, so to speak, then you just don't have those people anymore. It's that simple, so that was comp, but the comp of 3.2 million was based on the $1 million a month run rate. So comp at 3.2 million on a $12 million annual revenue is not horrendous. It's not where I would like to see it, but it's not horrendous. It matches a little more than, to what people think of. However, when you write down the revenue, and we had to write off a bunch of revenue too from that, you can't write off the cost of goods sold to their operating expense, unfortunately, right? It's like that was money that just went out. So even though there was other money that came in and we had to take that impairment loss, I said this last year, it's like we had to write off revenue because there was not the support for it on the books from some of these acquisitions. However, there was definitely support we had for the operating expenses. Obviously, we paid it, credit card, wire transfers, everything else. That was supportable.
You publicly stated that the traditional MSPs model is broken and dying. All right. What do you believe is the biggest blind spot legacy MSPs have that ReachOut is capitalizing on?
Oh man, it's a completely different operating model now. It's when I look across the country, and I have coaching clients too. I coach MSPs, and when I talk with them, it's like that you get stuck up in competency, and that's what I see. That's the biggest roadblock for any MSP that I see. Because things are not different. And it's kind of a sweet spot, which is why this roll up in the acquisition model works well right now. Because there's a lot of individuals, I'm 45, right? There's a lot of owners that are in their 50s and 60s that were the IT consultants back in the late 90s and early 2000s around the .com era when they got into this. That's when Windows Server was out. That's when you could search Google for anything and just figure it out as you go. I got into the industry in '99. I was certified as a Linux certified professional. I got my MCSE, which is a Microsoft engineer certification. It's like a doctorate, at least it was back then in Microsoft, in 2003 for Server 2003. However, I recognized something about 10 years later. It's like, this is moving super quick. Technology is moving super quick. And I didn't want to, personally, I didn't want to keep up with it. I would rather build the business. I mean, coming from, literally coming from almost like an entertainment side, right? As the church side, when I grew up in church, and I was always the worship pastor, right? I love being on stage. I love playing my guitar. I love singing for people. I love guiding them emotionally from one step to another place. It's like, I love the human side, dude, which is why I absolutely push so hard with ReachOut to be on the human side of things. Everything relates back to human. Everything's communication. Everything is engagement. It's not just tickets, which is what most MSPs are. That's the broken model. It's not just let's just fix the problem and move on. No, it's guiding the business from a place to where they are scared shitless into a place to where they feel supported. And the only way to do that is through communications. Now, the biggest thing, obviously, AI. Everybody talks about AI. But, dude, 18 months from now, 75% of what MSPs do are going to be taken over by AI. hands down. That's why the old model is broken. And there's so many that are not adopting this. And they're thinking, well, what can I use? I can use ChatGPT. Now ChatGPT became the new fucking Google for MSPs. You know, instead of asking Google, how do I fix this server problem? Now they're just asking ChatGPT. You know, better
it's
answer.
True.
It is better answers, but it's not what it's made for. So there's a big competency issue across the industry, not just with technical, but also with business. You know, because a lot of these owners are very much so, and there's nothing wrong with this to get started. You know, if this is where somebody wants to be, but they get to a point to where they are paying their mortgage and they're a little bit comfortable. I'm the best person to say this because, bro, I was there, right? I was taking like 150K out of the business every year, you know, able to pay my mortgage. It was more money than I'd ever made in my life. This was like 2012, 2013. I was happy. I was fat, like literally too. You know, it was good for me. It made sense. Then I had a health issue in 2015, almost died on the operating table with a gangrenous gallbladder that was attached to other things in my body. And I'm like, screw this. It's like, I got comfortable for a moment just because I had more money than what I had ever made. It really wasn't even a lot. I mean, you're talking 150K, right? But it was a job, dude. It's like to have that stress, that you do being a business owner and making the same amount that you can make working for somebody else is just ridiculous. So I'm like, my purpose is bigger than this. I reach back into my spiritual roots for something like that. It's like, I want to be able to do something that actually matters to a lot of people. And I'm in a position to do so. I know what my skill sets are. And if MSPs continue going the way that they are, I swear that at least a third of them are probably going to be wiped out in the next 18 months because they won't adopt what's coming next. And it's hard. And you can't catch up competency wise. You cannot catch up in 18 months. It's impossible. The only way to fix it is if some of the MSP owners get over their own egos and hire for those competencies, which means they have to sell more too, which means now it's more than a job. Now they're actually running a business. Yeah. So it's a crazy shift that's happening in the industry right now.
Yeah, and what you're doing is super impactful to people. It literally affects them on the daily. I want to ask, the transformation to a Berkshire alphabet style structure is ambitious, right? How do you ensure focused execution across multiple ventures while maintaining brand cohesion and shareholder value?
That's a great question, man. It has to do with really a necessity. And this is part of that MSP model shift too. Because ReachOut is, I mean, we're adopting AI, right? That's a subsidiary, obviously. We're adopting AI, injecting that hardcore into everything that we do. And I know people are like, well, everybody says that. It's like, you didn't know that it's way more than, you know, going to ChatGPT. It's finding, you know, the next autonomous level 1 technician, trying to help build that out with an agency that we're partnering with, you know, so shit just fixes itself, or this thing roams around and fixes itself, right? It's great for scalability, not eliminating jobs, but it allows us to continue to bring more in. And Trustless was born out of the issues that I had last year, you know, with acquisitions. And when I came out of the shower one day, it's just like, man, if only I had this, you know, and I had this whole idea in my head. And I was like, then this would never have happened.
Well, how far along is Trustless? And like what like, if you could break down a little bit on that, what real world problems is it solving? How will this affect people like me?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. Trustless is going to be B2B at first. And I'll tell you exactly what this is. I talked about this a little bit on a few other podcasts. So how far along? I'll answer the first question first. The MVP, because what I did when I came out of the shower, I started looking around, and I've got an extensive network. I have individuals that I'm partnering with, including those that own the chain, the specific chain that we're using that was originally developed by Disney. And Trustless is being built on top of that. The MVP, taking a look at all of these pieces that I had, think of it like an orchestra. It's like I already had all the instruments in my network already. I just needed to put them all together into a band that nobody's ever made this type of band before. Yeah, so it isn't anything necessarily. It's not necessarily using new tech, but it becomes new by putting it together the way that it is. Yeah, and that's the beauty of this, because everything that needed to exist already existed. And the MVP is basically, if you don't know software, MVP is a minimum viable product. Just by putting those orchestra pieces together, it's already at about 70% complete to a minimum viable product. Because that just already existed, but you put
Can you give us a timeline? Like how close are we to launch?
We just officially, even though I talked about it a few months ago, we just really officially opened up the first $20 million round about 3 weeks ago. So that we raise, right? And I've got a couple of meetings in New York this week, next week for those as well. My hope is that it's 12 months, but within that 12 months, the first step is bringing on existing MSPs. Yeah, because it's a network that I'm in. I'm already an influencer in that space. It makes sense bringing them on as proof of concept, because the first real world thing is like, let's pretend it's a law firm. When you hire an MSP, you give away your keys to the kingdom, all of your passwords, right, that exist. Yeah, and then let's keep going a little further. Let's pretend that you get pissed at that MSP. It happens a lot. They're not doing their job right. They're not solving your problems. What's even worse is they're not forward thinkers. They're just reactors. That's it. They're not forward thinkers. So you're like, we need somebody better. You hire somebody better. That incumbent outgoing MSP gets pissed. This is a story that happens all the time. It's like, we're not going to provide support for something like that. We've been in this position. It's like, hey, for ReachOut though, if their bills are paid, they're up to date on it, no problem. We have literally printed out like binderfuls of run books and sent PDFs. Here's all the information about your stuff. We want to ensure a successful transition for you. It's called just being a human, dude. Back to that human thing, being kind. But most aren't that way. I mean, unfortunately, think of your cable guy that comes to the house. They're condescending. They talk down to you. Hey, did you restart it? Did you unplug it? All that.
Is it plugged in?
Exactly. Unfortunately, that's a lot of this industry too, man. It is. So it's never, I shouldn't say never, but very rarely is it a smooth transition to another MSP. So where Trustless comes into play, it's a 2-key system, but the owner of the data always continuously owns the data. So at any given point, they can just lock that back up again between that relationship with that MSP, and that MSP no longer has those passwords anymore. It's that simple, but it's built on the blockchain, quantum encrypted, a 2-key system, and there's proof on both sides because of the specific blockchain we're using that the sender's identity and the recipient's identity are verified within that, along with the transaction itself.
This is completely disruptive to this industry, man.
Yes.
And you're on to something. You are on to something here. I firmly believe that. Corey asked a question. He goes, are they still looking to add acquisitions? But I want to follow up with that. You pivoted. You pivoted from, and I'll get back to you, Lisa. You pivoted from large acquisitions, to smaller, $500,000 to $2 million, with 2 to 5x scaling potential. Can you share an example of a current or upcoming acquisition that fits this thesis?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example, and then I will. I'll also contrast it to the ones that we've done already, right? Because the ones we've done already have been larger, at least larger in our space, right? Most of them are under $1 million in revenue. Very similar to just how small businesses look typically across the US. But MSPs that are large are 4 million, 5 million. They're rare, they're unicorns, they're out there, but that's typically right where private equity starts to swim to buy these things up. That's what we were looking at, to make big splashes. I mean, we were going public, right? To make big splashes in the public markets, wanted to post a lot of revenue right out of the gate. We did it. The challenge that we ran into were 2 different things. The biggest one being culture. ReachOut has a very, I'll just call it a common sense culture. And that has proven so difficult to teach in mass. And ingrain people in that, because it's when you do larger acquisitions, we discovered, to where you gain 30 to 40 employees overnight, it's very difficult to indoctrinate them to what I'm going to call is the right way of doing things, the human way of doing things, the ReachOut way of doing things. And then add on to that, sellers. We found that every single one of our acquisitions had huge seller's remorse. And it's because if you take a difference, right? Because I think back when I was only doing maybe 500K, right? That in revenue, $500,000 in revenue, it was me and one other dude. That was it. And at that point in time, it's like, you don't really have an ego because you're not a huge business, right? But you build up to something that's maybe $5 million. Now, all of a sudden, as a business owner, because maybe you got your fancy S Corp, you're able to pull a lot of money out. You're able to divert a lot of cash. you're not just taking home that 150K anymore, like I was doing, right? When it was back like 500 to 700K in revenue, feeling a nice, comfortable income so I could pay my mortgage. No, now you're looking at more like 400 to 500K a year that you're pulling out of the business at 5 million. You know, and that's a big shift, dude, because the technical skill sets of these individuals, or even the business skill sets of these individuals, do not match up for a company that's looking to do $100 million in revenue. There's no way that you can pay them or should pay them 400 to 500K a year in salary. It just doesn't match up, man. So when it's right away, it's like a pay cut and a lifestyle change from what they're used to taking. And that's the biggest thing that we saw with seller's remorse. And the second was ego, just because now they're not the man or the woman. Yeah, and that's another issue to try to overcome. The downside, that ties back into culture. And if that seller doesn't come on board fully with the culture, then all the people that used to work for that seller, those 30 to 40 people that you gained, are also going to stick with the old culture too. The smaller acquisitions are easier to integrate both technically and with people.
Yeah, culture is everything. You know, even like I work in education and I've been in many jobs. That is what shapes success.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that, because if everybody's not on the same page, if everybody isn't abiding by the same overall philosophy, if everybody doesn't adhere to the skeletal structure of a business or a plan, it's going to go to shit.
Yeah,
you know, and it takes one bad bone. It takes one wheel, you know, on that car to screw over the whole process.
Right on.
I think it's you're 100% right in that focus. And I think the manageability of the size and the fact that you still are talking about 2 to 5x scaling potential on that, it's just smart, and it is commonsensical, we'll say.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I wanted to post a lot of revenue. I'm ambitious and everything, you know, and I said at the beginning that I'm not going to post this in like a victim mentality, and you know, to where it's like, I'm going to blame the sellers. I'm going to blame all of that other, you know, the people that worked for those actors. Now it's quite simply that I underestimated the magnitude that's needed in order to bring on dozens of people at a time into a new culture. You know, I expected a lot out of individuals, and it was just a very large behavioral change for too many people at a time. You know, if we had been down the road a bit, maybe, you know, if we had already had 300 employees, it's a little different, because you're just bumping it up 10%, you know, but operationally, all good, dude. All good. The issues that I underestimated were with people, and that's on me.
Yeah, no. Hey guys, you have some great questions. I have a couple more questions. I'm going to get to the chat. And hey, if you guys haven't already, and I want to just, like, if you're not following these guys on the Twitter, go do it. And by the way, if you're watching on Twitter right now, if you comment, I could see your comments. So if you're watching on the X, I said Twitter. Damn it, I'm old school, but whatever. If you're on the freaking X, put the comment in there. And this is what it's all about at the BFC. We're here so you guys could do due diligence. And if you're watching this show and after you send me a message saying you should have asked this, shame on you. This is why we're here. We're here for you guys to ask the questions, so you could get your DD right from the source, right from the horse's mouth. But give these guys a follow at ReachOut IT. Find them on the X. They're pretty vocal. Rick is an outspoken guy, as you can see. And I will say, so what do we have here? Hey, Paul McKinney. Cheers to you, man. He wears BFC hat around town today, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah. Yes. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. If you're watching, she just left. We just had dinner. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. See, brownie points. Don't get Mom mad. So with the 28.4 reduction in COGS, all right, and 145.7% jump in gross profit, what specific operational efficiencies or technology implementations enabled these margin improvements?
Yeah, we just there's another way to put it. We just said fuck it, and we stopped trying to integrate all the operational stuff of the acquisitions. That's really what it came down to, because you know, all the vendors, and we wanted to take a nice approach again and be inclusive and be like, hey, maybe you're doing some stuff that's good. Let's try some of your stuff, you know, and bring it on. It's like, no, we had a system that was working. Yeah, and we're not doing that anymore. You know, we have the way that ReachOut works, and we're just going to do a rip and replace, so to speak, when it comes to both technology, meaning the vendors that are used, the systems that are used, and then in addition to that, how things are structured, because from a people perspective, so there's a very streamlined way that we have it. We have some back-end engineers, We have a network administrator that's assigned to every single account, and then we have level 1 and level 2 technicians that handle tickets. We tried incorporating things like project managers, and different positions that are in there just because others were doing them. And it's like, that was just so bloated and it did not make sense. Yeah. And then there's nothing that I can say that we found that was well integrated into ReachOut from what some of our acquisitions were doing. Yeah. So that's a big reduction in COGS. And if you take a look back before we went public, again, I founded ReachOut 15 years ago, right? We would always run, even higher numbers than what you saw in the 10K. There was like 60% gross margin. We were sitting in like the upper 70s and lower 80s at times.
Wow.
With very, very little resources underneath that because it was just streamlined. We've even done webinars with a company called IT Glue, which is owned by a $22 billion software company, Kaseya, because we have over 1,000 self-written SOP articles on how to fix shit. Yeah, and it's just a culture of documentation. But that was another thing that others didn't understand. They were just acquisitions, fixing tickets all the live long day. It's like, no, you fix it, you document it. That way it's done the same way, every single time after that. Yeah, so that's a process to get to that point. And that was a maturing process that we did operationally. So a lot of the reduction that you see is because of that we just said, screw this, we're just doing it the ReachOut way. We knew that it worked. And again, I will own that. I will absolutely own that because I wanted to be very, very inclusive of other people's ideas that we would bring on. I wanted this to be, a little kumbaya-ish with the acquisitions. But I've learned now, I had a coach about 1.5 years ago who was a Navy SEAL, and he's like, you're just going to have to learn to be ruthless. He's like, it doesn't mean you lose empathy or lose compassion, but it just means that you have the vision and you have the direction. And anybody that wants to go outside of that doesn't mean to entertain new ideas and all that. But at the same time, you just literally say, no, this is how we do it. And that's what I had to get to the point of in doing that, just because I wanted everybody to have ReachOut was always fun, man. And last year, dude, was not fucking fun. So getting back to really who ReachOut is, and even more so, I'll say this, more so who I am, getting back to who I am.
Got it. I think that, the lesson learned, it really, I'm trying to think of the perfect word to put this, like it ignites future success. And you take that experience and is the word, it transpires you, I would say. Maybe that's the wrong word. I don't know, but that's the word I would use.
Yeah.
I know somebody out there is probably like, that's the wrong word, damn it.
That's the wrong word.
That's the wrong word, damn it. But no,
I think that's a word, right? Isn't that one?
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I want to go back to the AI thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
You're leveraging AI-powered operations and automation.
Yeah.
What specific use cases or success metrics can you share that demonstrate their impact or on the growth or their efficiency?
Yeah, in the models, anyways, I'll say this because it's not fully implemented yet. We have a couple more meetings to get this thing in, but then it's training time with all these. So it's a few months until it's up and going completely. We have seen overall ticket reduction in the models by about 35%. We've seen response time get chopped in half. And it just brings us to a level of scalability that can't be done without it. There's other implementations of AI too. Remember, I was talking about those, over 1,000 self-written knowledge base and SOP articles. This is what a lot of companies are doing, and what we're actually going to be consulting on too is implementing almost your own GPT internally, to where it crawls through all those tickets and can actually associate with your articles. And then this is what Neo will do too, as we get this going with the autonomous, suggest resolutions to the tickets before you even start working on it, if it's a human that's taking a look at it. And then in addition to that, it's a generational shift. Again, with the old MSP model, I used to chant around the office, dude, seriously, running around the office, because I just did this the other day too with one of our people. Technicians are linear thinkers, right? It's B comes after A, C comes after B, D comes after C. You can't skip steps, and that's great. That's great for people who follow a process. It's freaking awesome for that. However, sometimes developing a new resolution, it can be a bit challenging because it's zooming out a little bit. That's what AI is meant to do. It's doing the zooming out for you, for the technicians, to allow them to think in different ways and get down to the points of where it's They are really more so looking at it from a human aspect and how this is going to affect the customer rather than just churning out tickets. That's the beauty of what AI can do. And even the chatbots, this is another shift in the industry, right? Running around the office and saying, call first, duplicate, call first, duplicate. This is what I was getting at before I went down a rabbit hole here. Our process or SOP has always been a ticket comes in. If it's emailed, you are picking up the phone and you are calling the customer. And then duplicate is you need to see the problem with your own eyes. And this is the linear thinker, because techs will start down a road that they think it's on and start to fix the wrong problem. You know, and everybody means well. Everybody means really well. But unless you see the problem with your own eyes, it's going to be an issue, because then you can fix the wrong problem. And then you're like, oh, it should be good. It's like there is no should that exists in the vocabulary of reach out, because the very last step in the SOP is to verify. And we literally say, okay, try and break it. I'm watching. After it's fixed, chatbots come into play because that takes time for customers. You know, and this has been the last 10 to 15 years. But now when you look at anybody who's under the age of 40, they prefer to talk with a chatbot first before a human, you know, to try to get some kind of self-care first before a human being, you know, and that's the same. I mean, look at fucking ChatGPT. You know, I saw an article, I think it was in Forbes the other day, that people are getting emotionally hooked on ChatGPT now as like literally their therapist rather than seeing a human therapist. You know, so this is where everybody's mind is. So it's like as we implement AI, if we can do some self-service options, or say I'm having this problem, have a fully autonomous level 1 technician that's interfacing with the customer that can do it at, you know, a third of the speed and respond twice as fast and suggest things for them to do too. But at the same time, we still have humans that are back there that are monitoring what's going on. And on the customer side, they can say, hey, I just want to talk to a human. But the majority of them that we're seeing in this model are going to say, you know what, I'm okay. I don't need to talk to a person. I just need my problem fixed. And if I can get it done quicker by clicking a little button and typing a few things, I'm good. This is why MSPs, if they don't adopt something like this, they'll be out of business in 18 months.
Well, and I could tell you, those weren't the exact words that people say. I'd like to speak to a human. Usually,
yes, exactly. Fucking representative right now. Yeah.
Give me the representative right now. Damn
it. Exactly.
I want to pull up a couple questions here, and I'm just going to read them, and because a couple of them are similar, but I want to acknowledge everybody.
Yeah. Let's tackle the hard ones. I like the hard ones.
Yeah. So I'm going to put a couple up regarding the notes. The only question I have is he going to pay off the notes or let them convert? Another one in regards to that. Where is it? I just want to make sure I acknowledge. Okay. Can you please explain the convertible note situation? Is there a plan to resolve some existing debt? I see that there is 10,000 in notes being issued on the first of every month. So this is an issue. A lot of people are excited about where YCRM is going. They're excited about this reboot. They're concerned about the notes, and they're afraid. And like you say, Wild West, the purge, whatever we want to call it, of shares and stock being dumped on the heads of retail. So what are you doing to address the note situation? And should retail feel comfortable moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer the last one. I would think that retail should feel comfortable, especially with where we're going. Now, if I take a look at the notes, there's two different types of notes that are out there. The first ones were notes that were at a fixed conversion price, and those are the larger amounts. That was roughly the 1.1 million that I was talking about earlier on, right? And those have a really, really low fixed conversion of like 0003, something like that. It's fixed. And this is all in the public filings, you know, so they're in there. The 10K note that are issued every single month, I actually addressed this in the Telegram channel a little bit ago. We have a financial analyst, and that's the best term that I can give to him. I don't know the appropriate term, sorry, but it's I mentioned I did a Reg A before we reverse merged. I found out that during the Reg A that we had our internal financial staff, we had Kingsley Charles, who was on our board, and we had the auditor, because we had to go through an audit in order to do a Reg A plus, a tier 2 Reg A. We had to go through a full audit of the company. Nobody had the skill set to put the stuff internal into the format that was needed for the auditors to interface with the auditors, and even much so beyond that, actually file the right stuff with the SEC. That was a specialty that we found, in a financial specialty, to where it was almost kind of like this middleman. I called him a financial analyst, but I would call this role almost like a translator, that takes QuickBooks and turns it into financial statements for filings so that auditors can look at it. It's a translator. That's what the 10K notes are. And that was a requirement of our reverse merger. So instead of paying cash to this individual, of course, they wanted in at notes, and that's all that is. That is not a fixed low price like the other ones are. This one is a variable depending on what the stock price is at the time, with a discount. That's all that this one is. So those are much more friendly, I would say, than the original ones. The terms are anyways. So two different kinds of notes. The 10K every month is for the financial analyst. That is how he is being paid.
Okay, I want to follow up, and we did talk about Trillium, and so I want to just bring that up and throw that right out there. How's your relationship? I know a lot of people, we said they love him or hate him, whatever it is. A lot of people don't like how they dump shares. How's your relationship there? Is he going to be in the mix going forward? And are they going to let the stock freaking breathe? That's what I want. That's what I want to know. Because we're ready to get going here. So
I mean, it's when you connect the dots, you can start to assume certain things, and whether that's actually the case or not, there's no ever definitive information out there, but dots can be connected. The relationship with Trillium is great, and I don't want this to be misconstrued as anything other than just factual. This is what this is. If I were in those specific shoes, the way that you make money on these kinds of things is loaning money, you convert and you sell. You make money on the sale of the stock, and regardless of the history at all, if I take a look at this pragmatically and objectively, there's a good business model behind something like that. Now, some companies do well, right? Some companies do really, really well. Others don't do well. So if somebody were to put in, we'll say $1.1 million. Of course, that individual is going to want to get that back. And this is the mechanism that you get that back in, right? It's an investor. An investor puts money in to get more money out than what they put in. It's just that simple, right? And then some companies, if they go in the toilet, of course, that's the only method of getting the money back out, is to continuously convert and sell. The relationship that I have with Trillium is actually quite positive, to where there's a lot of opportunities in the future to potentially continue business. And I see us as being in a very different position than, like you said, a lot of OTC companies that have no revenue. I'll say this, all the conversations that I have with Trillium, they want to see an uplist as bad as I do. And are making introductions and also just helping with strategy without putting any more money in. Of course, it's just that. It's like, how do we get to the next step? Because that is where we need to go. And quite frankly, that's why they jumped on board to begin with. It's that was always my plan, was to go to NASDAQ. And when they saw that, this just made sense because we were already profitable before we did the reverse merger as a private company. So I hope that answers. I answered, the relationship is good. Can there be modifications? That's not something that I can speak to in private conversation right now. Just like any deal, I'll say hypothetically, of course there can be modifications if both parties agree to it. As of today, what I'm focused on right now is getting our queue in. That's it. And then we can look forward to some other things. I've got investor meetings, because I want to see liquidity in the stock and I want to see an uplist. And Trillium shares those two things. They want to see liquidity. They want to see an uplist. So right now we are most definitely in sync.
Okay. So Snowman Invasion just had a follow up. So is that going to resolve some existing debt?
Well, if you take a look at the 10K in one of the notes, that with our, the numbers are in there. It's in one of the footnotes that there will be $8 million or so in liabilities that will be dropping off with this queue, with the financial restructuring.
That's positive.
So very positive. Yes. Talk about that kind of a gain. Exactly.
Right? Okay. Yep. All right. That's something to look forward to. All right. Let's. I have more questions in here. So
the plan already happened. If I could already executed on that, and we put that in a subsequent event on the K.
Yeah. And he did a big concern his notes. All right, Corey did talk about that, but he wants to update on the $100 million in financing, which you talked about earlier, for Trustless, and how does YCRM benefit?
Yeah, we're looking at 2 rounds. It's $120 million. $20 million we need during the first year to finish the MVP, and then also bring it to market. So I mean, the use case for that is quite simple. 4 to 5 million to finish the development, another 5 million or so and you can do the math at that point to bring it to market. It's really marketing. That's it. Bring on the MSPs, put this into a potential another industry. The 100 million comes after that, and that's to expand it, hardcore expand it into a lot of different verticals. And it also increases the valuation of the company too. And I'll put it this way: Trustless is not a wholly owned subsidiary. YCRM has an equity stake, a large equity stake that we're securing in Trustless in order to benefit the whole. And it's really to do a couple of different things. One, if you raise round numbers, right? If you raise 100 million in Trustless on a valuation, we'll just say round numbers again, 100 million in Trustless, and we'll pretend that YCRM owns 25% of that company. Now there's a $25 million asset on the books, on the balance sheet. So when you ask, how does YCRM benefit? That's just very simplistic math on how YCRM benefits from something like that. In addition, because we're doing the Berkshire Hathaway model, really like an Alphabet, like Alphabet owns Google. Google's not the public company. Alphabet is. But Alphabet also owns Waymo, the self-driving cars. They own Nest thermostats. They own YouTube. It's across the board. It's all of these individually operating companies that are separate, but they're symbiotic with each other. So ReachOut would absolutely be able to sell Trustless as a product and use Trustless within the organization, which obviously that would benefit YCRM as a whole as well. And the last bit is really kind of like an exit strategy for investors. Doing it this way to where YCRM does not wholly own Trustless, but they have a significant stake in it. There's really 3 exit options. Trustless could spin off on its own to a private buyer, which of course that benefits shareholders of YCRM because now there's an infusion of cash for that asset. Trustless could also IPO on its own, same type of scenario, because you'd have to buy out the existing shareholders. Or Trustless, just very similarly to what Grok and X did, right? Or was it SpaceX? I can't remember, but there was a share exchange that happened that was valued at several billions of dollars.
Wow.
It's the same type of scenario to where Trustless could be completely absorbed into YCRM if that's the right case for the investors that are investing in Trustless and how fast that starts to move.
Excellent. And I just want on the same wavelength here, the $20 million that was raised, what will they get in return? Are we talking shares? So are they going to get shares in YCRM? Like how's that going to work?
No, right now there's nothing on the term sheet for shares in YCRM because that's just straight up in there. So when it comes to the actual term sheet, just like any investor, and I can't speak specifically to the terms because those are under NDA. Again, Trustless is a private company, right? There's just an equity stake that YCRM has in Trustless. So the 20 million that's raised, yes, the idea is you continue to go on just like any public or any private company and continue increasing the valuation of that company. So the next liquidity events, like the 100 million, for example, could potentially liquidate some of those investors that are in the 20 million. Or those exit options that I was talking about. It all depends on what it is. But if we raise 100 million, again, round numbers, the valuation ends up being 300 million 2 years from now, those investors just tripled their money.
Okay. I'm going to ask this one too, or Corey is going to ask this one. YCRM has a great share structure. Can you keep it low without reverse split? And I know some people were talking about, reverse split will be a big concern. Especially as the OS go up. So you really do have a beautiful share structure. And this thing, and I've watched the stock move, guys. I know Lisa Matthews has watched it move.
Yeah.
It moves like a hot knife through butter. And so obviously when you want to go to a big board, you want to go, other CEOs have said, from a position of strength. And so it wouldn't really be advantageous for you guys to split down here, would it? Or would you want to try and get that share price as high as possible, even if you entertain that split?
Yeah,
I mean, is that even on your mind right now?
My answer before you asked that last question was simply going to be, I don't know right now. And it's because of that fact is that it's not even on my mind right now. I think I've said it this way before: is that if it's strategic, I'm open to it. If it's just to do it, I'm not open to it. And strategic would mean that there needs to be some kind of beneficial outcome, which could be an uplist, or it could be bringing in some kind of liquidity if it's required by a strategic financial partner, but again, I like to shoot straight. I don't know. And again, I'm new to the capital markets. I've only been in it 18 months, right? I don't know of any NASDAQ company that has a 500 million shares, man. You know, it's it's a great shit. You're right. It's a great share structure for OTC, but I don't see it being a great, just from what I can see visually, I don't see it being a great share structure for NASDAQ. Yeah. So right now it's not on my mind. Like straight up, it is not on my mind today. I'm more worried about liquidity and our path to uplisting. Maybe a reverse split is part of that uplist. Maybe a reverse split is part of that liquidity. Both of those are super important for shareholders. So it's kind of like there's no perfect answer. You know,
would it be safe to say that you want to, because we're talking profitability, we're talking increased revenues. And we've seen there's a couple of companies now. I'm thinking of one in particular. I'm not going to name the company, but their numbers are freaking phenomenal. They split down and they're probably going to be a NASDAQ company because the core of their business has outperformed what is the norm of OTC.
You got it.
So you want to get to that point where it's like, all right, our numbers look great. We're profitable. You know, we have minimal debt. Let's get the hell out of here. So, I mean, so do you think that's an interesting thing? So it's like, you don't know. It all depends the cards that you're being dealt. So you wouldn't do it just to do it. I mean, a lot of people do that. They just like split just to get a higher share price.
I know.
And then they dilute the hell out of it. So I think it has to be strategic. If and I've seen it. I've seen companies split that have done absolutely nothing. Horrible balance sheet, minimal revs. They're in the hole. And then they split up and then they start diluting again. Then they, I mean, it's horrible. And so I think people are just concerned. They don't want to see that with YCRM.
I mean, I can say this straight up. There's been no talks of doing one right now. And that's literally because of what you said. It's not even on my mind. And for me, it would need to be strategic. It would have to be tied to liquidity or an uplist in order to have this make sense.
Lisa Matthews said they wouldn't have to split when the institutions come in. That brings liquidity. So
we'll see. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I mean,
that's what I'm chasing right now. You know,
it is what you're chasing. You're chasing big numbers, man. This isn't no ice cream truck.
I know, exactly.
No pun intended. No pun intended.
Yep.
This ain't no rinky-dink operation. You're talking about a disruptive sequence that is going to, penetrate the industry.
Yeah.
Hugely. Like seriously.
I know everybody wants to make a lot of money. I mean, hell, I'm in it for that too. Let's just be real. It's depending on where you got in at, but what's the all-time high in the stock? What was it, like 2 cents or something like that? A little bit above that, maybe. I'd have to look it up. But just imagine, even without a reverse split, I'm just saying hypothetically, right? Imagine this: if it got to 5 cents. I think everybody would still be happy if we reversed when it hits 5 cents. I'm not saying we are, but to your point, you execute on the business plan and you get a lot of people behind this, a lot of retail traders behind this. This is something that I would love to see go, to the point to where any sort of reverse split, if it's necessary for a strategic reason, nobody really cares about it at that point because everybody's already making money.
Yeah, well, and that's the difference. There is a difference, and I know that Ravi says split will damage shareholders' money. Not necessarily. Now, 90% of the time when it's done poorly, and shareholders don't make out. That's just the truth. There have been some awful situations in regards to reverse splits, and I agree with them. But at the same token, if you have a surging share price, if you're pushing a 3, 4, 5 cent mark, if your quarterlies look great, if you're bringing in money, if Trustless is being funded, you own 25% of that. If they're putting out, if they're getting adapted into all these systems, and you're moving up to that 4 to 5 cent range, that would be the way to do it, because then you have a committed retail, you have committed institutions, and then you're going to probably get approved for a NASDAQ application. But this is all speculation on our part. Obviously, we're just asking you the question. So,
I get you. Yeah,
I don't want to back you up into the reverse split corner, but we'll do it. That's why you're on the hot seat,
dude. I don't mind the hard questions. You know that, but it's not on my mind right now. It hasn't been on my mind because my mind has just been getting current and dealing with the shit from last year and getting all this stuff cleaned up, and then we'll figure out what the next step is. Yeah, and after that, it has to be strategic. It has to be tied to something beneficial for the company to move to the next phase.
Yeah. I just have a couple more questions, and I know you're traveling. You're actually at the airport right now, right?
I am. Yeah. I've got I board in like 25 minutes. That's
Holy shit. See, this works out. And I did have a really a good question, and well, I did want to ask about FINRA. You got notes from FINRA. How's that going right now?
It's like Chinese water torture, man. It seems to be like everything else. It was submitted the day after we got current with which was in February, with the Q3 from last year. We submitted the FINRA app again right away. We did submit it last year in July, but then we became delinquent, and then of course went on the expert market. That canceled the corporate action last year, so we had to resubmit it this year as soon as we were current. The latest thing they asked for, which is what I posted on this last Monday, was they asked for another updated shareholder list, even though they had asked for that just 3 weeks prior. And I even talked with my security. I'm like, dude, we already gave this to him. And he's like, I know, now they want it as of today. So that this has been this step forward, and it's been annoying, but this is why I'm sure they say it takes 60 days to 6 months to get it done. I would have loved to get it done sooner, but the next step is literally to say, we've given you everything. And this is a letter that's going out tomorrow, I believe, from my attorney. We've given you everything. There's some stuff in your portal that we've already provided that you have not, by a human, checked as received. Let's get on this, because we've done everything now at this point. There should be no issue to delay this.
Excellent. I want to ask you this. And I was typing it so I didn't forget it. But I want to ask about exciting upcoming announcements and catalysts. Does the retail have a lot to look forward to in the next couple months?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. My intention is to start putting out a lot of PRs on this. I'd love to see at least every other week, if not every week, because
Which means you have a lot going on then behind the scenes.
There is a lot going on. Yeah, there's a ton going on, and I know people don't like this, but I haven't wanted to talk about much, because every conversation I've ever had with investors leading up to this is like, wait, isn't this an ice cream company? Wait, cybersecurity? What? It's like it just did not compute for anybody. So I think getting this out in the open right now. Thank you for having me on, by the way.
You're great.
Just kind of go through last year and what took place, and we didn't even go into the details of that. The tornado that hit the house. That's when we're actually drinking. I haven't had much of my scotch while we've been on this, but it's
we poured one beforehand.
I know, exactly.
Cheers to you, sir. We poured this so we could do a little bit of that towards the end of the show, and I go, yeah, just like last time.
It's not my favorite Macallan, but it's Balvenie, which is
this is a High West. It's better mile, but
I do like
my co-coach I had for flag football. He was nice enough to get me this at the end of the season. So yeah, thanks, Chris. By the way,
nice. We digress. Where were we? We didn't even get into much of what actually took place last year. With that, that's fine. I mean, we can talk again at some point, I'm sure. But there is a lot to look forward to. There's a lot that's happened behind the scenes.
Move forward. That's it.
That's been the goal. That's it. And that's been the plan. And I think we're actually in a position to be able to do that now, which is why I'm good. When we started talking, a couple weeks ago, it's like, let's get on the show again. Let's do this and bring everybody up to speed.
Well, I talked to you before, guys. If you're not following on X, follow the BFC account on X at Buffalo Fireside. We've been doing spaces every Thursday. Next Thursday, you're going to be joining us for a 4 p.m. after market close. And that's going to be great having you on there. So you're going to be there answering questions and partaking. So you are going to want to, what's a new thing? Get your asses there. And so you guys could do some due diligence, and we could put them on the spaces hot seat. And, there were just some follow-ups that they had, PRs before the name and ticker change. Yeah, they're going to have to. They're not going to wait for that,
will.
Right?
We absolutely will. I mean, the Q is being filed this week. It's the last quarter too that we're going to have to write off some revenue, because it had to do with the acquisitions, and all that's cleaned up now at this point. That really sucked last year. Towards the end of the year, we had to write off, I think it was another like $900,000 in revenue, just because of the way that stuff happened. There was more revenue than what was actually on the books. It was just difficult combing through all that shit.
Yeah. And last one before, I know you got a flight to catch. The main thing is getting PRs across wires like Schwab. Are you going to approach the big networks to release your PRs?
We will. We'll approach them for sure. It's been a little bit of a conundrum to try to get stuff on there. That it's up to them. And this is one thing that I don't think many people get. No matter what distribution you use for PRs, it's still up to that network whether they want to pick it up or not. There's no guaranteed submissions when it comes to these things, unless that specific distributor has a relationship or a contract with them to make sure it's on there. Like some are like, yeah, we submitted to Yahoo Finance, but it might not show up there or not. It's always up to the individual media outlets, from what I've seen, to actually decide to publish it. I'd love to see it on Schwab. Yeah, I mean, whether it's Global News Wire, New Media Wire, whatever it is, or EIN Press Wire, there's a lot that's going to be put out by EIN Press Wire. I'm going to tell you that because, again, the dollar amounts when you're doing these kinds of things, again, I'm efficiency, right? You can get, for $1,000, you get 40 or 25, because it's $40, 25 press releases on EIN Press Wire, and it still goes pretty much everywhere, versus the PR News Wire and all those, which are like $1,000 a piece.
Yeah.
So the important ones we want to hit on Schwab. But then after that, we'll just release more frequently. And by the way, the whole OTC subscription stuff is changing coming up too. But now we'll be able to, rather than rely on a partnership that they have with a specific distributor, we'll be able to upload our own news links. So any press release we put out under any distribution partner, we'll be able to just link it directly to OTC on the OTC markets page.
Excellent.
That happens in July.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome, and it's very exciting to watch what you guys are doing. I want to give you the floor again, just a final statement to shareholders, private shareholders, retail, the BFC community. Go ahead, close us out.
Yeah, one thing I really learned last year, I always knew that I could take hits, but beyond that, after looking at myself in the mirror after going through what we did last year, is that the level of resilience that I've discovered that I have is just off the charts. And I say that humbly, because I got raked across the coals, but coming out of last year, it's like you look at yourself, it's like, well, you made it through all that, so I'm a big fan of truth. So the truth is that I am resilient, and the plan has not changed. ReachOut is still doing acquisitions. We're targeting smaller ones at this point. It's just a different model so that we can scale efficiently and more importantly, sustainably. But then don't just think MSPs either, because now with the Alphabet model, there's other companies that I'm looking at. Like an example, there's no deals done, but an example, I looked at a security hardware company, right, to complement things. That could be like a Waymo, or a Nest that falls under that's symbiotic with other things, or maybe we pick up a software company, a SaaS company that we use in-house for one of our tools. Now we own the stuff. There's a lot of cool things that I'm looking at to be able to stack this for the benefit of everybody that's involved. And I'm still here. That's the last thing I'll leave it with, is I am still fucking here.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? We're going to see you on Spaces in about a week and a half, 4 p.m. And we're going to have you on again. I want to get some of your team members. I want to do a roundtable. Let's get Kevin Harrington on.
Yeah, let's bring
some
on
of your board. If you want employees to come on, talk about the ins and outs of the business. And we could do some case studies, some case examples. And we're going to open up the chat again. We are going to be watching you. We're going to be excitedly watching you. And so thank you so much for joining us on the BFC. And it's been great talking with you, brother. Great work.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Let's get this guy out of here. Get him. He's gone. Excellent guest. Rick's always, it's been so long since we've talked, but we've been talking over the last couple of weeks, and it seems like they have this reboot's going to be very exciting. It's going to be exciting for retail. You guys asked really, really good questions, by the way. This is a type of engagement I love to see at the BFC. So kudos to you guys for asking all those great questions. We're going to be, hey, by the way, we're doing another BFC primetime next Sunday. So stay tuned to see who that guest is. And we're going to be doing a Spaces this Thursday. And next Thursday, we're going to have Rick Jordan back on to answer all your questions for all you ex-nerds out there. So I thought that was fun. We learned a lot. John Don learned a lot. I want to say thank you to the entire community on Facebook, X, and YouTube. I think that's it. That's all I got. Remember, guys, there's more that binds us than breaks us. Peace out. Have a great night.